Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation, introductions, Frank, and I want to thank all the organizers. Have been a real privilege to be invited to this inaugural event and the importance of rare diseases. Rare diseases is a field that is evolving, as we all know. It's a field that is of global inherence, and it's a field that touches many, many lives, including mine as a caregiver. I have been a rare advocate for the last 10 to 15 years, and I am delighted to be here with all of you today. So I wanted to touch base and follow up. There will be a little bit of overlap between the presentation from Dr. Marks and my presentation, because I am a former FDA senior official as well. I was not working in CBER, I was working in CDER. So there you have the complementation. I'm also a former senior vice president for scientific, clinical, and regulatory affairs in one of the largest CROs in the world, conducting clinical trials, modern trials, and making it possible for patients, so decreasing the burden of patients. And right now, I am an independent consultant on clinical research and regulatory affairs. So I'm going to touch base on what's happening with rare diseases and bringing technology, equity, and the approaches of cell and gene therapies. We know this information. Historically, there has been a major gap in terms of what we wanted to do and what has been the result. Randomized controlled trials are the gold standard, continue to be the gold standard, and has been the gold standard for the last 70 years or so. The problem is that we now have cumulative information as to what these kind of trials bring to the table. Yes, many medicines have been licensed, approved, using this kind of approaches, but there has been a price to pay. And the price is that really these are very expensive enterprises. It can be between $1 and $3 billion. And there is a lack of inclusion of diverse populations in these trials. Historically, there is a high dropout rate. The enrollment rates have been challenging. Enrolling at the sites have been challenging because patients have to travel to the sites, and that might take anywhere between 2 hours in the best case scenarios to about 1 day, depending upon the geographies where you are located and where these trials are conducted. There are problems connected to the connection between the standard healthcare system and the unification and the information about the utilization of clinical research, even as a care option that we have covered here. Investigators in clinical trials are burned out, and many of them actually quit because it's a major challenging enterprise. And there are barriers, geographic barriers and cultural barriers connected to implementing these trials. So this is impacting also the rare disease field. And what can we do better? That is the question from the clinical research perspective, from the patient perspective. So Peter presented the information about the number of gene therapies that have been approved by CBER. And here you have an overall trend and chart that CDER published in 2022. And it really shows what is happening in terms of the trend up in the approval of orphan drugs by the agency. So you can see that the message is really clear. There is a major effort at the level of the FDA to review, and when granted and when possible, when the safety and efficacy are proven correctly, grant approval to these kind of novel investigations. This is good news for orphan drug approval. This is good news for the rare disease field, not only for drugs, small molecules, but as Peter presented before, for cell and gene therapies. So what can we do better than randomized controlled trials? And so one of the options is to conduct decentralized clinical trials. And you might have heard that in many different names: virtual trials, decentralized clinical trials, and others that I don't care to pronounce because they are not really in sound with the work that has been done at the agency to implement guidance for decentralized clinical trials. The bottom line is that decentralized clinical trials are the textbook rare diseases are the textbook example for decentralized clinical trials. And this is trending up globally for pediatrics, for adults, and in multiple therapeutic areas, including, very importantly, rare diseases. This is an important development. The adoption is happening, and it's happening not because of COVID-19 only. It's happening because these are approaches that are here to stay. I mentioned before that I was at the FDA, and this actually, I'm really proud of these 4 guidance documents because I actually worked in these 4 documents, among others. And these are the latest guidance documents that the agency published in regards to first decentralized clinical trials in 2023, and the use of digital health technologies for remote data acquisition and clinical investigations, the importance of using digital wearables as an example in this kind of enterprises. And the other 2 are connected to equity, diversity, and inclusion. And so these are the core guidance documents that are paving the road for lowering the burden to patients, for increasing diversity, for utilizing technology to enable these investigations and bringing them to the participants. So from here on, I'm going to make you all intentionally dizzy because I want to show you, and there will be a test after my presentation to see if you pass or fail. And the intention here is to show you the number of guidance documents that the agency has developed to guide the field, to guide all of us. That regulatory framework is truly enabling the innovation and the industry so that novel medications are developed. And so here you have the regulatory framework for decentralized clinical trials and the use of digital health technologies. And you can see and appreciate anything that is connected to computerized systems, the use of electronic source data documents, the use of electronic informed consent. Yes, we can do this remotely. And that is important because if I am a rare disease patient and I am in a wheelchair or I am in pain, I am just not able to go to a site. And therefore, the inclusion-exclusion criteria in a randomized controlled trial might eliminate me. I may not qualify, or even if I qualify, I just don't have the energy to go to the site. So that's what we're talking about, enabling these kind of approaches, decentralized approaches with this kind of technologies so that we can actually be more embracive of all the people all in the world. And so the use of software for clinical decision-making and enhancing diversity, as I mentioned to all of you. So those are core elements and core guidance documents to enhance and enable in decentralized clinical trials. Now, it's not only CBER and CDER, CDRH is also part of a key of the centers, medical centers, and they are extensively working, and they are now harmonizing all the technologies connected to and the policies connected to the technology that will facilitate these trials. And so there is extensive work that is supporting, again, decentralized clinical trials, real-world evidence, and any modern trial design. And so here you have the CDRH Digital Health Center of Excellence was implemented in 2019, September, when I was at the agency, and I was a proud collaborator with them because this is important for all of us. And so here you have a series of guidance documents that support, again, the digitization of the field and embracing of the modern trial designs. And CDER, also connected to all of these, has recognized the importance of the patient voice early on in clinical investigations. So what you have at the very top, guidance documents that connects to the patient voice in different instances, in collecting comprehensive and representative input from the patients, in the methods that are to be identified and what is important for the patients, in the selection and developing of modifying fit-for-purpose outcome clinical assessments. And so there is connected the information from CDER in this regard. There is information also from CDRH and connecting clinical outcome assessments with devices and the importance of how we need to harmonize all of this. So before I get to this, let me just continue making you all dizzy. Peter mentioned the innovation that he's working on, and he didn't have the time to mention all the things that CBER has historically done. And here you have them. And so for this, it's impossible. It will take me all the time to go through this, but I can tell you, you have a flavor for here of the historical work that CBER, in collaboration with other medical centers, CDER and CDRH, have put together in regards to cell and gene therapies. And so you have anywhere from the manufacturing of gene products, studying multiple versions of cellular gene therapy products, considerations to develop chimeric antigens, all the way to human gene therapies for rare diseases. And it continues. Considerations for the design of early clinical trials for cell and gene therapies. And it continues. And it continues all the way to 1998. And he clearly mentioned he was there in 1998. Why is this important for the rare disease field? Because we just said over 70% of these rare diseases have a genetic component. And when it comes to India and the rest of the world, we are not tapping into those important sources of people with rare diseases that need these kind of solutions. So what can we do to harmonize all that the agency FDA has done for the United States so that we can bring that lessons learned and that important regulatory information to India, to Asia, and to all the other continents in the world? This is work in progress. This is something that we need to tackle. So let me go back here because this is the global landscape according to what I see. And so we have, evidently, I have shown you the work of the FDA in decentralized clinical trials, in technology, in cell and gene therapies. There is equally important work in the European Union, in Europe, through the EMA, different initiatives connected to the use of TCTs and digital health technologies. And in Asia, there is interest from the regulatory agencies as we speak, in China, in Japan, and in India, who are having conversations and have had conversations with the industry to get information, knowledge that is critical for policy development. Let me just say, the regulatory framework is on the hands of the different regulatory agencies across the world. They need to set up the regulatory framework that represents the legality and the regulations on how we're going to do these things consistently and within that framework. Yet the innovation stands on the hands of all of you, the sponsors, the makers of the drugs and the biologics, and that combination is really powerful to make things happen. So let me go back to what I was mentioning about the DCT guidance. And on the left side, you will see what the guidance really covers, and it's about the understanding what is a decentralized clinical trials. It's not connected to the operationalizing. According to the regulations, it's connected to where the investigator at the site sits, and is it seeing the patients in the site or remotely? Is that kind of relationship. And why? Is because the Code of Federal Regulations in the United States talks about the responsibility of the sponsor, the responsibility of the investigator in terms of the patient safety, in terms of the administration of the investigational medical product. Very simple. This has been fought out for quite a while because there has been a lack of full understanding of what that is. We can take this knowledge and share it openly as it is so that other countries such as India and everyone in the globe can benefit from it. So that's the regulation, that's the guidance. And what do we do with this? When I worked in a CRO, my job was to operationalize this. How do we design the trials? How do we deploy these trials in the communities? Because these trials are happening where you and I are living. And so the idea really is to have patient-centric approaches, participant-centric approaches. And so you surround the participant in the place where they live with a series of solutions that are driven by the technology, a digital platform that is interoperable, that is multifunctional, that can aggregate data from multiple electronic sources, and you customize the trial so that you make sure that you understand from the very beginning to the very end the journey of the participants, the flow of the digital data, the flow and the supply of the medical supply and the experimental medical product. So you can have, in addition to the implementation of TCTs, there is a guidance on digital health technologies that I participated in, as I mentioned to you. And the key point is that it's too late when you are running the trial and try to implement technology and retrofit a trial to make it decentralized. That's not good clinical practice. That's not good clinical research practice. You need to do this ahead of time. You need to have a multidisciplinary team, and you need to do it really ahead of time. So in the DHT guidance, the idea that there is a lot there, but the idea is to have that technology, the digital health technology that is verified, that is validated, and that usability studies have been conducted, because it's about the safety of the participants in the trial, and it's about collecting data in a reliable fashion that the agency can trust. So it's not an improvised technology. It has to be verified. And yes, you can use nowadays your cell phone, but that cell phone also has to be upgraded to make sure that it can collect and process the information of the trial. Now, you have to do this, and you can do this for the specific trial that you are conducting, or you have the option, if you know that you are using one of these technologies, one of these biomarkers, one of these clinical outcome assessments across multiple therapies, across different clinical trials. If you are a large organization, you have the option, according to the FDA, to come to the drug development tool program, qualification programs. And then if you have a biomarker, or if you have a clinical outcome assessment, or if you have a digital wearable or a digital endpoint, the programs exist and you can qualify them. In 2022, I coined for the field, and I was doing clinical trials, plenty of the clinical trials, hundreds of clinical trials. I could say, how do we look at these regulations from the operational standpoint? What does it mean? How do we go about this? So we know the metaverse is in fashion, right? And we hear that all the time in the media. Well, I am also fashionable. So I said, we have a digital universe. We are digitizing clinical research. And what is a digital universe? All of us. We are the innovators. We are the ones that think in what kind of digital solutions we will put in place to operationalize clinical trials across therapeutic areas, including rare diseases. So the Digiverse is the digital universe of solutions, of digital solutions that we can implement 3 solutions, 2 solutions, or a single digital platform to conduct these trials. When we operationalize a trial with the digital technology perspective, what we are developing is the footprint of that digital trial, because it's customized, it's specific, and that is a representation of that trial from the technology perspective, and it's very unique, and it has to be optimized. So DCTs are happening across the globe, 7% before in early 2000s, 14% in the mid-2000s, 90% during COVID or so, and now we're about the 14-15% leveraging off, and the trend is for this to continue. So patient-centric approaches. Again, all of these solutions have to be meaningful for the participants of the trials. And so we have to embrace them in the places where they live. We need to leverage with the standard healthcare systems because their safety is first. And there are a series of solutions, digital solutions, that are currently being utilized in addition to the electronic platform with all the multifunctionalities listed here, and I don't have time to go through them, to emerging technologies that are supporting these trials. And that include, for example, digital therapeutics, software as a medical device. Clinical research as a care option is very much emerging. It's something that is not applied globally. And we have upcoming technologies such as blockchain, tokenization, edge computer. Yesterday, we were mentioning federated computer and so on and so forth. So the technology is here to stay to support these trials, and we have to embrace it, and we have to customize it to create that digital footprint. Needless to say that I'm an advocate for equity, diversity, and inclusion here in India and in the rest of the globe. That is important. So we have a series of historical barriers that we need to overcome, and we need to make sure that we embrace everyone, because not only is the right thing to do, the ethical thing to do, medically, scientifically, is also important. So the guidance that the agency lately developed talks about addressing that criteria of equity, diversity, and inclusion, the importance of designing trials with diverse populations, and the implementation of diversity plans in clinical investigations. So the Digiverse is real, is here to stay. You have seen the amazing work that the agency has done across the 3 centers, and there has to be a need for multidisciplinary teams getting together to work globally in the harmonization of these trials, because these trials are happening at the global scale in India, in the United States, and the rest of the world. So thank you.